Welcome into, dare I say, a whole home edition of Sport Ball. Nothing special about this one. If the kids are, if you put the kids to bed already, put yourself to bed. Do yourselves a favor and just turn off this podcast. That being said, we are going to hit two sports today, and they're exactly the ones you think we're going to hit: NBA and NFL, baby. We're in full swing, so we're going to hit on the first 2 weeks of the NBA, and then a little NFL midseason awards at the end to get the listeners going. How are we feeling, boys? You excited?
I'm feeling great.
I'm fueling up on Chipotle mid
Hmm.
podcast, so never felt better.
Wow, I love Chipotle. I got double jab today, so this is my flu game pod. I said make
Flu and
a
COVID.
I said make a cocktail vaccine to my body, please, and that's what they did,
Do you
and I
go one
liked
in
it.
each arm or both in one arm?
I asked the lady, and I was like, "What do you think?" And she's like, "Me personally, I'd want just one sore arm." So I said, "All right, just hit me up in the left." And
That's
then
what
I
I
ended
did as
up,
well.
yeah, and it was fine. I played a basketball today.
Yeah.
Well, I woke up feeling terrible, and then by the end of the day, I was fine.
Mm,
That's a lesson, kids. All right, let's do NBA first, shall we?
we shall.
I like to call this the 2 week or 2 week check-in.
Ne- Excuse me. Nice.
You like that, Kyle?
It's pretty descriptive.
uh, I asked you guys to give me a couple of things you believe in and things you don't believe in from the first 2 weeks. Because every year, the first 2 weeks happen, and we freak out about stuff. Like last year, the Kings were 0 and 4 or 0 and 5, whatever it might be. The Pelicans were in first. It was completely late. Remember how bad the Lakers were? And they ended up in the
They were,
Western Conference Finals.
yeah, but they were that bad pretty much for half the season until post All-Star
Right.
break.
Right. So that's why I want to check in and see things you actually believe in that's going to continue and things that are just a 2 week farce. So, Seth, I've been told that you did your homework, so I want to start with you, really test you. What's one thing that you believe in from these first 2 weeks of the NBA?
One thing that I believe in, which is really just an excuse to talk about maybe the greatest day of my life, is that the Minnesota Timberwolves will be a top four seed in the West.
Oh my God, I literally have those exact words written down.
For you believe or you don't?
For I do. I said the T Wolves will get a top four seed.
Great minds, baby.
You give the case first.
I
I
didn't
think
have
they're
those exact
legit.
words, but they were one of my teams as well.
Great.
Nice.
Let's dive into the T Wolves.
I mean, we all love Ant. He is unstoppable, as evidenced by his absolute takeover in overtime against my beloved Celtics, which I witnessed in person after catching an autographed Vikings football and getting booed by the entire stadium. Um, I think they figured out something with their three bigs and their rotation. Gobert has been playing more like his Jazz self than his Timberwolves self from last year. So their defense is suddenly good. And Cat hasn't even shot the ball well at all. And they're still like only have two losses and they've beaten the two best teams in the league. So I think that's pretty encouraging. Their defense between Gobert, McDaniels, and Ant is elite. And they've got some solid players off the bench too. So I don't know. I like them a lot. We'll see if that'll translate to playoff wins for them. I think that's still up in the air just with the way um the way defense changes in the playoffs and having players who are not a threat on offense can be tough. But I think regular season, if they stay healthy, they're gonna be a top four seed for sure.
Yeah, it feels like Ant has arrived. Um, 28, 6 and 5 on 51, 43, 82 shooting. And like you said, Seth, it's on both ends, right? I almost feel like he's one of the best one-on-one defenders in the NBA, like in clutch
I
time
think
situations.
Their backcourt is so suffocating with him and McDaniels. It's outrageous. We saw it against in that Boston game. What they did together was insane.
And we saw it last year. Remember when they locked up Luka and Kyrie on the last
Yeah,
possession of that Mavs
yeah.
game?
Which forced them to tank the rest of the season and not make the playoffs.
Exactly. Like it's almost as if you have like two apex wings against the T-Wolves. It's not as big of an advantage as it would be against other teams, which Boston found out the other day. If they trade Cat, forget about top 4 seed. You're looking at 4 championships. Okay, get that man off the team. This man's at 17, 8, and 2 at 42, 31, 86, 31% from three, and he's the greatest shooting big man of all time.
Regression's coming, which means they're just going to get better. Nas Reed has almost identical stats to him this year, and he's playing like 8 to 10 less minutes a game.
He's literally
I'll tell you,
9 less minutes and has the same stats.
That was a takeaway from me that you wouldn't necessarily know from watching the game, was just how much of a fan favorite Nas Reed was.
Nas is that boy.
Every time
he's
he checked in the game,
Stogie boy OG.
the crowd went wild.
Oh yeah.
He made a 3 in like the first quarter, like relatively inconsequential shot, and it was just like it exploded. Everyone was just out of their minds excited that he made a 3. So
dude, right now Nas Reed is just better than Cat. It's just as simple as that.
Oh, I've been saying this.
I've finally come around.
Yeah, as you do,
or
years later.
You finally are right now, Kyle. But
hey,
I definitely am not a
maybe
Cat
I just
guy.
speak
I
things
think
into existence. I don't know. I mean, we didn't really get a full season with Cat last year, and like you said, as much as I hate Rudy Gobert, he looks back to the defensive player that we've expected him to be when he was traded to the team. Like his offensive rating has stayed pretty consistent over his career at 110 to 112 or whatever. So that's the same, but he's got a defensive rating now under 100 with a net rating of almost 13. So that's been huge for their defense too inside. Like I feel like he's not getting bodied as much as I feel like he was last year when we were watching these games. And then I think ever since the summer watching Ant with the US team, I think we're really in for the Ant breakout year into like the superstardom category. Yeah, I think this team's going to be really dangerous come playoff time. I think they're dangerous now. Obviously, they've been the giant killers, right? So far.
Yeah, they can hang with anyone. I mean,
Easily.
they've been taking down the Nuggies and the Celtics.
There's something
about
the league. Ant's mindset. Like I would not want to go against him in the playoffs this upcoming year. Something just seems different. Like he's always been super like ferocious, but like he seems like he's got a major fuck you attitude this year.
It's too bad that one of his teammates is the dumbest players in the league and plays terrible every playoffs. He's already Cat has already fouled out of 2 games already. We've only had like 7.
I'm not gonna lie, the Bulls suck and I'm done with them. If I hadn't been an OKC fan essentially for the last 5 years, I'd claim Minnesota as my team.
They have Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, I know. He would be like the redheaded stepchild though. He'd get no love.
What about the team that actually has a redheaded stepchild, the Kings? They have Kevin Huerter.
Yeah, he sucks. He turned it around kind of last game in the scoring front, but that's tough too, because then there's also the Pacers. That's all right.
I'm going to be hanging out on the Pacers in one of my other points. Don't you worry about that.
I'm sure it's part 2.
Kyle,
yeah.
Can I read Nas Reed's shooting splits to you?
You act like I don't read these before I go to bed every night, but please recite them to me now.
55, 44, 93. He might start the 55, 45, 95 club. He might do it.
Can I bet on it?
Is that one of the things that you believe will continue? 55, 45, 95 from Nas Reed?
I don't see why not. I mean, he's the greatest player in the NBA.
Good point.
Okay. Any more T-Wolves that we didn't hit? We love them.
I think there's I don't know how much of a hot take this is, because honestly, there were quite a few projection systems that had them finishing first in the West this year, and we kind of scoffed at it. But I don't think it's that crazy anymore, especially looking at their strength of schedule. They have like the 4th easiest strength of schedule. Obviously, we're still very early, and that updates based on how other teams are doing. So But at this point in the season, after what we've seen, they're already clicking. You would think that they just get better. So I think there's a good chance they could finish in that first spot, especially now. Obviously, we know what Jokic could do, right, just by himself. But Jamal is out for at least the rest of the month here.
That's true.
I haven't looked to see what their schedule looks like to see if they really have any tough games, anyways. But
I'm looking at it now. They play the Bulls on December 12th. That's a loss.
Jesus.
That's probably when Jamal Murray comes back, actually.
I think the Bulls have a really nice giveaway that night, though, because I looked at getting tickets to that game.
We got to give the fans something since we're so bad. Okay. I'm going to go on to my next I believe in, or whatever we're calling this segment. This probably isn't even that hot to take, but I believe that Tyrese Halliburton is the best point guard in the league. I'm saying pure point guard. I'm not counting Steph, I guess, is the cheating part
I'm
of
glad
this.
you brought this up because I had to omit something, and that was one of the ones that I was debating keeping or not. So I'm glad you said it, so I didn't have to use one of mine.
Yeah, I kind of discounted Steph and Luka because I don't think of them as point guards. That's kind of cheating, but he's like kind of like the new Chris Paul. You know what I mean? Where he's like the new point god almost in the league, taking over that throne. He's
So
averaging
who
20.
are the other eligible pure point guards according to that classification?
Well, it's a dying breed, isn't it?
It
in
is.
the NBA. Jamal, I would say probably, especially this year. Jamal has been like he's had like 12 assists on any given night. I'm just going through the maybe Josh Giddey. He's kind of a point forward.
Yeah.
So essentially, what you're saying is Tyrese Halliburton is better than Josh Giddey.
I've gone through two teams. I'm just looking at the standings right now. Fred VanVleet would be one, I'd say. CJ McCollum is now, maybe? De'Aaron Fox.
De'Aaron, probably.
I didn't really think about this statement at all when I wrote it. I just thought it would be like one of those things that no one would challenge me on whatsoever.
Does he know?
I mean,
what kind of podcast
think I think it's a true statement. It's just a matter of, like you said, is it not bold at all? Because if you're just calling it pure point guard and it's a dying breed and all the best point guards aren't really that pure, then it's not really saying anything.
Maybe it's like he's like the last pure point guard in the league. You know what I mean? That's probably a better statement. He took over from the reins from Chris Paul. He's averaging 23 and 12 assists, leads the league.
50, 40, 90.
Yeah, 50, 40, 90. I didn't look after today's game, but he went off again. 27 PAR.
Goes off every game.
He really does. And he can make any pass. His step back three has become a huge weapon, which just kind of opens up everything else for them. And if the Pacers try to play a lick of defense, I think they can get a top 4 seed as well in the East. I mean, it's going to be tougher for them. But
what the hell do the Pacers have to do with this?
What do you mean?
You're just talking about Tyrese Maxey. Why are you talking about the Pacers now?
Did I say Tyrese Maxey at first?
Yes.
No, you said Halliburton the whole time, I thought.
Okay. Good.
I swear I heard Maxey.
Well, I love Tyrese Maxey as well, but my point was about Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh, I'm okay. I agree on both fronts.
How wild is it that conversation could have been interchangeable with two different players named Tyrese?
I just feel like Tyrese is more. Doesn't have the same playmaking as Halliburton. If I'm going for like the old school Chris Paul point guard, you know what I mean?
Yeah, let me look at this. Let me add him to this mix here. So one thing I was doing was looking at there's this NBA tool called Darko, right, which is like a adjusted and regressed optimized projections to project out like a compare players at different points of their career essentially on a graph. Things like baseball and stuff have these projection systems, and there's not really one for NBA. So this guy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, created this. And Maxey, so far in, what is this, his year 23 season, his projection so far is greater than like Curry's and Lillard's at that point in their career. Let me toss in Halliburton to this mix, who is younger, right? So we'll see though. I just want to. Halliburton's essentially on the same. Well, I think he's maybe a year older. He's 24. Him and Maxey show on this same like trajectory, which is comparable to like a Lillard or a Steph Curry. I tossed Chris Paul in here when you mentioned his name. He started super high, went super high. He's still higher. Like what is that? Like 4 deviations higher than league average point guard.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think this is the first time we've had we've had 2 good Tyreses in the NBA?
It's got to be.
I can't even think of another Tyrese.
Who was he? He played for the Kings. Or did he play for the Pacers?
Are you talking about Tyreek Evans?
Oh, Tyreek.
Halliburton?
I knew you were talking about that. Okay, let me just finish talking about Halliburton, then you can go to Tyrese Maxey, Kyle. If he's one of your things.
Part of my things.
The only thing I was gonna say is I lament every day the fact that I wanted the Bulls to take him at 4. We took Patrick Williams instead, who was averaging 5 points per game on
Relegated to a bench role.
On 23% from a bench role. He barely plays. He's averaging like 20 minutes a game. And he's shooting 23% from 3.
$100 million contract too.
No, that was taken out of
Or is
context.
that just an Instagram post?
Yeah, it was taken out of context from something that Zach Lowe said. He said something about I wanted the contract to start with a 2 and it wasn't 20 million, but that could mean that he wanted 25 or 29 million.
Right. Whatever. Any case.
Yeah,
he's definitely not as good as Halliburton.
Really? You think so?
Just another Chicago team just absolutely fumbling their draft picks, but
yeah. But anyway, Seth, do you have any thoughts on Halliburton? I mean, I know you were high on the Pacers coming into this year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think he's a legit all NBA first or second team caliber player. I think it'll just depend on how good is that team right away and his supporting cast, and if he has a secondary kind of scorer to rely on. And that'll determine like how for real this Pacers team is. But I think they should feel very good about their future with him as their centerpiece cornerstone. So,
and if you think about it, if it's true that the Sixers could have had Tyrese Halliburton for Ben Simmons back in the day, can you imagine? We don't really know if that was on the table.
They're off to obviously a hotter start than Sacramento was last year, but I kind of liken what we've seen so far to what Sacramento did last year. Right, they have what are they the best offensive rating in the NBA, but at the same time they have the 5th worst defensive rating. However, they're still top 10 in net rating in the league, so they're just scoring at an outrageous clip. I watched that game against Charlotte last week, which was insane to watch Halliburton go off for 29 points and 8 assists, I think it was, in the third quarter alone. The man couldn't miss. He controls the game so well at such a fast pace. It's just insane to watch. It's so fun to watch.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players, honestly. He's becoming one of them. And yeah, I think I'm very excited for the Pacers' future. Kyle, hit us with your Tyrese Maxey thoughts, if that's what you'd like to hit on next.
Yeah. So I told you I was kind of between a couple of things here, and I wanted to talk about OKC as I always do, but I figured people have heard that enough. It's time we talk about the Sixers, and I believe that they have a shot at the first seed in the East, but I also think they've kind of, even just over the first 2 weeks in the season, already cemented themselves as one of the, well, we knew they were going to be a good team, right? I think we had some questions. I don't remember where we all ranked them though. I don't think we all had them like definitively top 3.
No, I think we all had them like 6 or something. We didn't know what was going to happen with Harden.
Yeah, they definitely, I think, cemented themselves as one of those top 3 teams in the East with a sky high ceiling. The way the team is playing under Nurse is substantially different and better, obviously, than how they were all playing in previous years and when Harden was running the show. I think Tyrese is obviously, we've seen him, as you just talked about. We talked about 2 different Tyreses doing insane things on the basketball court interchangeably, but he's running that show there. But they're also kind of letting Embiid be a little bit more of a creator, which has opened up a lot of things. So I think they have a lot of options too, right? With all these draft picks that they got, they can make a move this year to really try to go all in on Nick Nurse's first year to make a run for the championship. But they also leave themselves open at the same time to, if they're comfortable with what they have come trade deadline time, they're going to have everything they need to sign another superstar next year if they want to. So it's like, not only have they shown us an immense ceiling over the first 2 weeks, and again, they've had a pretty easy schedule, but at the same time, they also have like the second or third easiest strength of schedule for the rest of the year too. So that game, I think, against Boston was really important to see really how they measured up against kind of the elite talent, and they did a great job. They won that game, right? So yeah, I'm just super high now on the Sixers. I know Seth doesn't like Embiid. I don't really like him that much still, but I love Tyrese Maxey. And I think if they can upgrade that Oubre spot, I don't think he really deserves to be a starter. If they can upgrade that spot before the trade deadline, like, what do you really need? I guess OG's been floated out there, right? Who knows what Toronto's going to do? Feel like they just need to go all in with that rebuild with Scotty. So that would be disgusting on a defensive side, but also OG can handle, create when needed, hit threes, finish at the basket, things like that. Like, he's a bigger, much better defender than Oubre. And yeah, I think they have a good shot at being the 1 seed by the end of the year.
First of all, unless prime Michael Jordan is available, there's no upgrade for Kelly Oubre. Secondly, yeah, we haven't really talked about the Harden trade on this pod, and what it gave the Sixers in return, right, was a bunch of rotation players and a few picks to try to flip for another star like OG Anunoby. So, and I'm not going to necessarily say they're better without Harden, but they're more. I think they're going to be more prepared for the playoffs. Like, I'll believe it when I see it, where Embiid could take the Philly far in the playoffs. But I like the way Nurse has run this team, where everyone's getting involved, and it's not going to be all dependent on Embiid dominating, because we've seen him falter in the playoffs before. So if they can lean more on Maxey and on Tobias Harris and the other role players in the playoffs, maybe they can avoid, those heartbreaking losses they've had when they're trying to rely on Embiid.
Not just that too. It's like Maxey is comfortable and okay with playing off ball. He doesn't need to be on ball 100% of the time, kind of like we've seen with Harden throughout his entire career. And I don't know if the last couple of years of him being like that 6th man or second fiddle to Harden helped with that, but he's a lot more comfortable playing off ball too, and still doing the right things, getting in the right positions instead of just standing in the corner.
Yeah.
Even if he gets a wide open look, not taking wide open threes, things like that.
I'll tell you what Seth's going to say right now. He's going to say, "Oh, actually, no, I'm not really worried about Philadelphia. They don't worry me at all. Embiid sucks. He's going to falter in the playoffs like always, and they're going to lose in the second round." Right, Seth?
That's correct. In fact, this was one of my things that I do not believe in.
Ooh, interesting.
Was I don't believe that the Sixers are any different than they have been the last 5 years. I don't think they're any better. Obviously, they're different. They've got different players. They don't have Harden. Maxey is better. I agree with everything you said about Maxey. I think he's really good. But I feel like every year with the Sixers, there's something that we say, oh, well, this is different, right? When they acquired Harden, replaced Ben Simmons, right? Then it was like, oh, this is the year for the Sixers. And every year they do well in the regular season. I expect they will again this year. And then every year they disappoint in the playoffs because Embiid isn't good enough or he gets injured, which is part of the package with Embiid.
And Doc
So
Rivers is a notorious playoff choker, so also remove that
yep.
from the equation.
And obviously they removed James Harden from the equation, so that should help.
Two
But
chokers gone. One remains.
but I think Sam, you said it correctly when you said I'll believe it when I see it. So
yeah. I mean, I like what I've seen so far. I'm not going to trust it, but I'm really excited to see them in the playoffs with Nurse because he's such a genius, and just the stepping up of these role players because I just obviously I kind of knew going to the playoffs last year that Harden couldn't be relied on. This year, I'm open to anything. We'll see.
He was a reason that they didn't get swept by the.
He's going to tell
I
us he scored
knew
40 in two
Kyle
games.
wouldn't be able to resist saying that.
How dare you? How dare you? I don't know the word.
I could just have a one-man podcast and say what you both would say.
I'd love to see it one week. I'd love for you to do that.
All right. I'm going to go to things I don't believe in. Seth, did we hit your last thing you believe in? I can't remember.
I swear to God, if you say Santa Claus,
There are kids listening.
you've told them to go to bed.
I think
We
you
did
still have one
not.
left, Seth. Yeah.
I do have one left. I believe that the
we will win.
Bucks defense will be a problem for them.
Sure is a
Not
problem
a
now.
problem for the rest of the league. Yeah. So I think obviously we knew that this was going to be the trade-off of getting Damian Lillard, but we didn't know it was going to be this bad. And I think it's a combination of the Lillard Drew switch and also the coaching switch with Adrian Griffin. Now, maybe he's just kind of seeing what they have, experimenting with different things, and eventually they'll figure out a scheme that works. But I think ultimately they're being exposed for some of those holes that they have, which will only become more vulnerable in the playoffs. And that'll be uh, a real thing that teams can attack that they haven't really been able to do with the Bucks in the past. And you're going to rely on Giannis to be an all like a defensive player of the year candidate in the playoffs and have to be scoring 35 a game. And I think that's going to be tough for the Bucks to be able to win, you know, under those conditions, unless it just is like Dame take over every game in the, in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it in the game against the Pacers today, where they lost to the Pacers. No one could stop Tyrese.
They
No one
didn't
could
even
stop the
have
ball at
Dame,
all.
and it
Yeah,
probably
they
would have
didn't
been
even have
easier
Dame.
if they had him, right?
Yeah, they had campaign on Tyrese, a better defender than Dame, if anything, and he still got cooked. So yeah, I think that's going to be a huge problem. I mean, who's guarding Tatum and Brown in the playoffs? Jay
Middleton,
Crowder and
yeah,
Middleton?
it's tough. And then you
Maxey
still
might
have Holiday
average
and Derek White.
38 points against them in the playoffs, dude.
Yeah. Maxey's going to go off against them.
Yeah, that's the real problem is like they have some like wings that they can throw at those bigger players, but somebody like Maxey, he's so fast. They got nobody.
Maxey is the fastest player in the league, man. I mean,
He's
I
nuts.
know he is, but like he's no one can stop him. He's too fast. All right. Things I don't believe in. I'll go first.
Thanks.
Let's talk about the other side of the James Harden trade. I do not believe
Hmm.
that the Clippers are a contender in the West with James Harden. We
Okay.
probably none of us do, but yes, go ahead.
Okay. I feel like the don't believe category now, I mean, you have made it up, so I guess who am I to tell you what the parameters of this podcast episode are? But I feel like it was the spirit of it was meant to be like things that are happening so far that you don't believe will continue. But the Clippers
Listen,
haven't even been good so far.
That's the
I'm
gist I got too, but I didn't come up with anything anyway. So I'd
that
like to
is the
hear what Sam
spirit.
has to say.
That is the spirit of the law, yes. However, I did have a fever when I wrote this. And
Oh, okay.
You always have a fever.
That explains it.
and
Were you also
also
suffering from night blindness?
I always am. Also, I just wanted to talk about the Harden trade. So I kind of shoehorned it in here. And that's just good podcast hosting. Look it up. So it's also interesting because we saw them play a few times and they're starting Russ, Harden, Kawhi, PG, and Zubac. And that lineup just makes absolutely no sense to me on a basketball level, on a deeper level. Like they
On
just
a
don't fit
spiritual level.
together. They don't fit. I feel like none of those pieces fit together at all. There's not enough shooting. There's way too much. There's just too much ball handling and not enough shooting, not enough defense. I don't like it. And you know Kawhi's going to get hurt in the playoffs, and then they're just going to say, "All right, Harden, time to take over," and then he's going to shit the bed like he always does.
I
I
don't think
don't.
anybody on that team is giving it to Harden and telling him to take over.
I just don't foresee them actually being a real threat at all in the West, and I know that some people did after this trade.
The man threw a cross-court pass yesterday that landed in the 6th row.
He threw it to Ian Eagle, and then he caught it. Are you guys with me there? I mean, do you give them even like a puncher's chance in the West? Like, what are you thinking after this trade?
I don't think any of us were really ever high on the Clippers at all in the first place. And
I mean, why aren't you high on them now, Kyle?
I don't like the mix of players together. I never enjoyed watching the Clippers in the first place. For whatever reason, any team Kawhi's on ends up being the most boring team in basketball.
So
But
true.
like Sam said, the collection of players together, I don't really know what a good lineup looks like for them just based on like I feel Kawhi wants to have the ball in his hand and just ISO. Paul George wants to just ISO. Harden doesn't want to shoot an open three anymore unless it's a step back. Uh Zubac is whatever, who cares? And like now you have Russ there too, the only person really driving to the rim, and it's a circus every time he does it. I don't know what's going to happen. So you replace Russ in that starting lineup with who? Terrence Mann, who for some reason they coveted, it's the Taylor Horton Tucker situation where it's like the dude's 26, what years old, almost 27. He's played what a year and a half in the league, and he's been coveted like that, and I don't really understand why. What does he add though to that offense or to that either side of the ball if he is the fifth person in? I just the whole collection of players doesn't make sense, like Sam said.
It's almost like it makes the most sense if someone gets hurt. It's like,
Yeah,
like, oh, he's insurance
it's
when
a
PG and Kawhi get hurt.
outrageously expensive insurance policy that you're still not comfortable about.
Yeah. Seth, do you echo all this?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a fan of the Clippers to begin with, and I don't think James Harden is going to make a good team better. So that's really it for me.
Great. That was our Harden coverage. How the mighty have fallen, both us as a podcast and Harden as a player. All right, Seth, give us your first thing you don't believe in. Or I guess second, because your first was that the Sixers are good.
Yeah, it was indeed. My second is that I do not believe that Dallas has figured out everything with Luca and Kyrie and them coexisting, and that everything will just be hunky dory for them for the rest of the season now.
That's a long title for something you don't believe in. That being said, it's also one of mine. That exact title, including the hunky dory.
Word for word, he has it written down.
I just had Mavs are a title contender written down as something I don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
But you go first. You're good at setting me up for these.
Yeah, I mean it's fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Like I'm never gonna trust Kyrie is gonna remain drama free for a full season. I think some of the moves that Dallas made, and obviously Derek Lively pick has been good for them. So I think they will be better than they were last year. But ultimately, when you're relying on Luca and Kyrie as two, like, similar to the Clippers conversation, it's like two ball dominant players who don't play defense. And to some extent, both of them are prone to, I don't know, dramatic issues. It's Kyrie mostly off the court, Luca just complaining to the refs every play, getting technical fouls, all of that. That's just not a safe bet, in my opinion. So
I do feel like Luke has changed a bit so far this season, though. I feel like he is trying a little more on defense, and I feel like he's not complaining to the extent as we saw last year, where it was literally every play. And like he got a technical the other day, and didn't he had another one of those funny reactions where he kind of just mocked the ref, but that was it. There wasn't any like big to do about the fact that he got teed up, which I feel
and
like
I think,
sometimes he makes it.
yeah. And I think you know, you could be right about that. And what I'm saying is I don't believe that will
Mm-hmm.
continue. I think a lot of it is like they've been winning. They've had an easy schedule so far. They played like, I think they're 5-1, and their 5 wins are against mediocre at best competition. And then they lost to the Nuggets. And so I think it's I mean, to his credit, like Luca does care a lot about winning, but when they're not winning, that's when he starts complaining to the refs all the time. So that's what I would expect.
Kyrie hasn't even been good this season either. Like he's shooting 27% from three. Like
I
he
think
looks a
he's got
little
some type of
washed.
like nagging injury is something that I've heard on a few other podcasts that's just he's trying to play through.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering if he's starting to fall off and like he just might fall off earlier than some other players because he's small and he has to like rely on finishing at an elite level. Also, I was looking at his basketball reference page and I don't know if we ever talked about this, but one of his nicknames is World B Flat.
He
Oh,
Oh,
should
that's
put that on the back of
incredible.
his jersey, officially change his name like Meta World Peace did.
I would love that. Also, where's Seth? Like he's not our
He's
Seth.
sitting
Right
right
here.
there.
Where's Seth Curry? He doesn't get like any minutes for them, which I don't really understand at all. Is it because maybe they just need everyone who plays to be a great defender? But like he's the better Curry brother, Kyle. I don't really understand why he's not getting minutes.
There is some type of conspiracy in the NBA that does not want Seth Curry to be the face of the Curry family. I'll tell you that right now. Because
It's
his
Doc
just
dad
Rivers
acknowledged it before. He knows it's
Doc
true.
Rivers said he's the best shooter in the family.
That's what I'm saying.
he's just never got the opportunities, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little I'm questioning how good they're really gonna be. They've had a soft schedule. We'll see when this starts to ramp up. Um Kyle, what
Mm-hmm.
don't you believe in?
I don't believe in the fact that Dylan Brooks is a changed NBA player.
Amen to that.
For
I mean,
real.
he looks like a completely different player so far this year. He's not taking 14, 15 shots a game, just outrageous shots either. The man's shooting 57% from the field,
Yeah, that is nuts.
54% from three.
Isn't he like leading the league in 3-point percentage?
Like I I'm impressed by Houston so far this year. I really like what Ime's done. They're running a lot of the offense through Şengün, and it looks great. But I just don't believe that Dylan's gonna be bought into this for the rest of the season. If they
Dude,
do, if he does, though, the way they look now, they look like they're gonna be at worst a playing team. Like they're looking good. They just blew out the Lakers. Granted, they didn't have Anthony Davis, but before that, they completely beat up on who was that? It was
the Kings twice.
King. Yeah, they destroyed the Kings twice, right? So without Fox again. So maybe
Al
it's
Foxton.
those are still like high profile teams that we expect, right? So yeah, I mean, maybe we check into this in another 15 games and see how the experiment's going. And if he's still
Yeah.
on the same pace, obviously that shooting is going to come down. If that shooting percentage comes down, do we see him then increase the number and try to make up for that in volume? Because if that's the case, that's not good.
That has been his calling card. It's not unreasonable to think that, like, none of us really predicted this, but it's not unreasonable to think that Ime Udoka could turn this team around in 1 year to like a respectable 10 seed.
No, I think we all had kind of pretty high regards to their talent that they have. At least I do. And they still don't have Tari Eason back, right? Who
Right.
should be huge for them off the bench. Yeah, they've looked really good, surprisingly. Van Vliet's not turning it over 7 times a game either, somehow. And I assume that has to do with the fact that they're playing so much through Alperin, he's looked so good. It's crazy.
Oh, it looks like Tari Eason came back. He made his
He
debut
just okay. I
last
thought I
game.
heard something that he might be coming back soon, so he made that nice.
They're like so deep with like good young players, and you just don't know what they're going to turn out to be, you know?
Yeah, Eason had 9, 9, and 2 in 14 minutes off the bench. He's like, you know what? He's like Nas Reed, kind of,
I was gonna say, it was funny you said that because I
with
was gonna
better
say Cat.
defense.
I was gonna say Cat could never put up those numbers. So, do you have anything on the Rockets before we move on to Kyle's last? Don't believe.
I do not, but thanks for asking.
I think we
You're
go to you
welcome.
for your last. Don't believe,
Well,
and come
me
back
and
to
Seth
me.
had the same one.
Oh, go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Well, it was the Mavs. We already talked about it.
Oh, that was
Also,
yours
I just
too.
realized I
Okay,
had
I
written
got
down
you.
here honorable nomination. The Sixers are better without Harden. It's something I don't believe in, and yet Kyle swayed me within 2 minutes of monologuing. I'm on the hype train, baby.
Yeah, I'd love to have you here.
All right,
What else?
give us what you don't believe in.
Oh, let me look at this real quick.
He didn't come up with
I
one.
I don't believe that the Cavs are a bottom half to bottom third Eastern Conference team.
I thought about that one as well.
Um, they've definitely had a rough go of it though. They're what, 3-5 so far this year. 2 losses to OKC as expected, I guess. Lost to the Pacers not too long ago as well. Just had some. They've also started the season right without Allen, who is back now. Garland without him as well. So I think we're going to ramp some things up. But again, I will say I wasn't as high on them this year, anyways, coming in, but I still had them in the playoff mix. So I definitely think they're still a playoff mix team, better than a play-in team. But what they've put on the court necessarily doesn't reflect that. However, Donnie has looked outstanding so far.
Yeah, I think a big problem was didn't Darius Garland miss a bunch of games?
Yeah, I think he's only played like
He's
2 games so far now. The last 2 he's been back.
Yeah, he's so critical to them. I love Darius. He's another pure point guard actually that I really like watching.
Yeah.
Can we have a little Evan Mobley conversation here? Because I became a little disenchanted with thinking that he has the offensive ceiling I previously did. Like it's funny because I watched Chet Holmgren and I'm like, okay, he's already way better than Evan Mobley.
It's outrageous.
Like it's not even a question. And I feel like Chet has the same defensive upside too. So I think Chet is kind of what I thought Evan would be. Like the 3-point has not come around at all. He's shooting 20% from 3 this year. And if he's not going to do
than one
that,
attempt a game.
yeah, and if he's not going to be a good shooter, he's not going to really bully anyone down low with any sort of consistency. I'm just not really sure what he is offensively, despite being as elite as he is defensively.
I'm with you there. And like I said, that was kind of
really
my
much.
thing coming into the season, right? Was like I felt like they were gonna underperform expectations just due to the fact that they have a lot of experimenting I think they need to do. And a lot of that revolves around Mobley, obviously. And like you said, it's not I mean, he's averaging 15 and 11, but still, it just doesn't look like it's all there still.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of if the Cavs were projecting themselves to be a top 3 seed, a lot of that was based on an Evan Mobley leap that isn't happening. All right, that's it for the NBA then, huh?
That's it.
I think that wraps it up.
All right, let's hit the NFL real quick. We've reached the midseason of the NFL. Interesting narratives going on right now. I want to do a little NFL midseason awards, but not the actual ones they vote on, because
Thank
I
God.
hate the MVP. So, first one I want to hit is the most disappointing team at the midway point. I had the Chargers put down for mine.
The
No, I
I did
Chargers.
wasn't
too. I had the Chargers as well.
the Chargers. All right,
Didn't you
I'll
not
tee you
even
up.
pick them to make the playoffs, Tim?
Yeah, and they're
So can
somehow
you really be
even
disappointed in
disappointing.
them?
They're just disappointing me even more than I thought they would. I didn't pick them to make the playoffs. That's correct. I just hate them. Like, can we start having like the Justin Herbert conversation too? I know he's
Might be
good.
time.
Like, I know he throws really good, and that's great and all. But can I see him win a close game? Can I see him elevate his team to more than the surrounding parts? Can I see him take a mediocre coach on his back and ride him to the playoffs? Because I haven't seen any of that yet.
No, I'm 100% in agreement. 4-4 halfway through the season. It's just like uninspiring too. Keenan's having a baller season,
Mm-hmm.
but that's about it. And you'd expect what we think I feel like are perceived as a top tier young quarterback to be able to also elevate the playmakers around him. We see it, obviously, Patrick Mahomes is just in a different dimension, but we see it in Kansas City, right? They don't have a true one wide receiver anymore, but they're still winning. They're still putting up numbers. They have Kelsey to rely on. I feel like you could kind of say, well, the Chargers have Keenan to rely on. They have Austin Eckler too, and yet it just seems like they're a middling team for the most part. Obviously, they're 500, so yeah, very disappointing from them so far. I don't really know. Now they got so many injuries too. They lost Mike early on. Now Josh Palmer's out. They don't seem to trust, or they've come to the realization that their first round draft pick, Quentin Johnston, who I've been pounding the table on saying he sucks ass, they're realizing he does in fact suck ass. They're not even getting
Quentin
him the
Johnson
ball.
is booty cheeks and he's not bouncing them. Yeah. Fuck the
I don't know if they
Chargers.
make the playoffs. I don't think they make the playoffs.
I hope they don't. I hope they disband
You're
as
right.
an
I don't really want to
organization.
have to watch that.
Seth, who you got as your most disappointing team?
I had the Bills for this one.
Great pick.
Thank you. When you look at their schedule, so far this season, they really have one good win. They beat the Dolphins 48-20. But we've also seen, the Dolphins definitely have some vulnerabilities. So that's not looking like as good a win now as it did at the time. And they have lost to the Jets week one. The Patriots, who are just an abomination, the Bengals, and the Jaguars. Now, yeah, so they really just haven't beat any good teams except for Miami, and they've lost to a bunch of teams they should beat.
They almost lost to
Um,
the Giants.
almost lost to the Giants, another abomination. Just feels like they're not they're not living up to the hype, not living up to their potential, um, not using their weapons, I think, effectively and efficiently. And Josh Allen just hasn't been as good as he has been in previous years. Um, so I don't think it's like it's over for them this season. I think they still have time and room and enough talent on the roster to turn it around and make a late playoff run, but they've been pretty disappointing early in the season so far.
See, I'm going to kind of refute the offensive side of the ball. I think they've been good on offense still this year. Steph Diggs had a couple game crazy run. He's still putting up great numbers as a wide receiver one. Josh Allen still looks good to me, and he's starting to defer more to his legs than I think we saw earlier in the season. Yet his running is down compared to his career averages, right? But I think that's also partly due to the fact that they've been trying to get James Cook going. And I just don't know if he has that build to be a typical running back that can support running through the tackles. Um, the most worrisome part is their defense, in my opinion. Like they started off the year, I think, third through the first 4 weeks of the season in defensive and DVOA. But the last 4 weeks, they are the absolute stone worst defense in terms of DVOA in the league. And when you look at who they played their last 4 weeks, it's not like they played a bunch of juggernauts that put up crazy points. They've played the Bucks, the Patriots, the Giants, and the Jags over the last 4 weeks. And their defense against those teams is last in the league. They're giving up explosive plays at an insane rate, which are plays 15 yards or more from the line of scrimmage. It's like, I don't know what happened to this defense, but it's completely fallen off the map. And that's the worrisome part to me when it comes, the rest of the season, and especially playoff time.
They gave up 29 points to the Patriots. I mean, you should just disband your team after doing that. That's disgusting. And I think they've taken a lot of injuries, right? They lose Tre'Davious White again.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mac Jones looked like a Michelin, the 3-star Michelin chef against them, just slicing them up.
And Von Miller seems to be either working back from injury still or kind of just over the hill. So they don't have like that great of a pass rush presence right now. I think the biggest problem on offense, on the offensive side of the ball, is they just seem to abandon the run game so quickly. Like James Cook is good, and they're like, hey, why don't we, if we give you like 8 carries in the first couple quarters and they don't work, we're just not going to run it all in the second half. That's what it
He's
seems
averaging
like.
4.7 yards per carry, and he has
Yeah.
1 touchdown on the year.
It's honestly despicable. So I'm worried about them. They're out of the playoffs right now, and we'll see if they sneak their way back in. Most disappointing player. I had one written down here, but I think I'm gonna go with a different one because I don't want to hear Kyle yell at me. So I'm gonna go with Kenny Pickett instead because
I'd like to know who you were
offseason,
gonna say because Kenny Pickett was on my short list as well.
I'll tell you who I was gonna say if you're good. Kenny Pickett this offseason, I was talked to as if he was Joe Montana, but turns out he's not even Brock Purdy. I mean, this guy sucks. Every catch that George Pickens makes feels like a miracle. Like it's like, oh my God, they got the ball to George Pickens. That's insane, even though he's like one of the best receivers in the league. And I don't know, he's never a very good arm, and like he's just not very good. And I thought the Steelers, of course, I'm saying this, and the Steelers are 5-3 and then fifth, like right where I had them
It's
in the
classic
prediction.
Steelers, though.
I know. I just thought it would look a little easier. I can't
CJ
really watch their
Stroud
game.
has 8 career NFL games and has now thrown more touchdown passes than Kenny Pickett has in his career.
And he has like 18 games. Yeah, he's not very good at football, unfortunately. And he has small hands. That's the thing.
That might be it.
They're like 3 times bigger than mine, and they're still the smallest hands in the NFL.
Hot seat for Kenny's small hands.
Yeah. So that's been pretty. I'll tell you what my other one was. It was Derek Carr, and you're gonna say you shouldn't be disappointed in him because he sucks anyway, and you should have expected that. So I didn't want to have that whole conversation.
Thank you for not
Avoided
forcing
that
us into having that
conversation.
conversation.
Seth, who's your most disappointing player so far?
Yeah, I think this is a hard one to come up with
Yeah.
because I think so much about like fantasy wise, which is not really what we're talking about. I think
Kind of relates though.
yeah. So I mean, from a fantasy perspective, I might say Devontae Adams. I might say Tony Pollard. From a real life football, I think you could argue Daniel Jones should be the
I
pick
was
for
thinking about
this.
that too. Yeah.
I mean, the Giants have been so bad. Obviously, Jones also was injured, but before his injury, he was atrocious. And I feel like towards the tail end of last year, and especially the Giants like winning a playoff game, many Giants fans were like, all right, Daniel Jones is our guy. We found our quarterback. He might not be like the best quarterback in the league, but he's at least like top 15. And turns out he's one of the worst, or at least just wildly inconsistent. And at this point, the Giants are just looking at one of the top draft picks next year and will most likely be drafting a quarterback, I would expect. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like we had huge expectations for him, but I
but
think
he
most
surely
people
didn't
expect him to
rise
be
to them.
competent. Yeah,
If our expectation was competency, he did not meet that
he did not.
expectation. That's really good. I had him on my short list as well. Kyle, what are you gonna go with?
I am gonna piggyback off a player Seth mentioned in Tony Pollard. I honestly thought about tossing Bijan in here,
Yeah,
as the guy I
that's his
talked about,
coach's fault though.
but yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And I kind of feel like we can say what's going on with Tony Pollard is a matchup coaching thing as well so far this season. Like they've been in some wild games so far. Like you got the 49ers game where they lost 42-10. You're not really going to ask him to be a running back in that kind of situation. They get up huge on the Patriots 38-3. You don't really need to do anything with Pollard. The same with the Giants in week one. And it's just like these really weird game scripts that I think end up on both sides of the curve, factoring out Pollard usage. But at the same time, his yards per attempt is down right over or just about or just over a yard per carry. Um, he's like scored those 2 touchdowns. What was that, week one? And then after that, hasn't seen the end zone since. Honestly, I think he's looked good in the passing game. But the thing is, we had these really high expectations of him continuing to be utilized in like these outside type of zones. But really, what they did was they shipped off Zeke and asked someone that was half the size of Zeke or even smaller to take on Zeke's role. When it's like that's not the best way that he's utilized. So it's like, what's the coaching rationale behind that? I really don't know. So
Yeah,
I'm interested to see kind of how and if the rebound happens in the
yeah.
second half, because I feel like it should, but so far he's just been meh.
I wonder if he's one of those players where it's like when you have a workhorse running back in there and he's the change of pace back, you're like, get the workhorse out of here. He's way more explosive.
I
And then
mean,
when he
even
has
still,
to,
like you don't really need to be a change of pace back though to devise a scheme that gets even your starting running back in better positions. Like you're asking a 200-pound 6-foot running back to run through a line of 360-pound linemen, and it's like that's not his style. That's not what he does.
yeah, I just wonder if sometimes like smaller players like that, you give them a bigger workload and it doesn't lead to the same efficiency as when they were a change of pace back. We should also
Could
mention he
be.
broke his leg last year.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Could
that,
be part of it.
that certainly doesn't help things, I imagine. Although he said in the offseason he was faster after breaking his leg. Clearly that's not true. Uh let's go to the positive. Seth, give me your best team of the mid-season of the NFL.
I think I've got to say the Eagles, just
I did as well.
overall body of work. They've got the most unstoppable play in the league. They've got one of the best quarterbacks, um, one of the best wide receiver duos, and a really good defense. So I feel like they're the most complete team. Do they have the highest ceiling? Maybe not. But overall body of work, what they've done so far this year, I think they have to be the choice.
I
If
think
they
they
don't have
do
the
have the
highest
highest
ceiling,
ceiling.
who do you think does?
I think the
So we just
Bengals
shat
do.
on the Bills.
The
Oh,
Bengals.
it's interesting. That's an interesting one for sure.
That
I don't know
doesn't
if I
get me
agree with
going.
it though.
Why
I
do you
don't
I
say
think
think
that?
offensively with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, when they're humming, there's nobody in the league right now that I trust more to like have a game winning 2 minute drill.
Hmm.
I feel like you could say the same. You could replace that with the Eagles and say the same thing though. What
Hurts,
AJ
AJ, and
Brown is
Devontae.
doing this year is outrageous.
Yeah,
I'll just
and
spoil it. I had him as my best player for the next award, AJ
yeah, he was
Brown.
on my short
Same.
list as well. And I mean, I'm not one to like that's my stack in the ACT league, so I'm fully on board with Jalen and AJ. I was just very impressed with what I saw from the Bengals last week, and I think if Burrow had been healthy the full season like he is now, then we'd be talking about them in very similar ways. And I guess, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is unfair to say that they have the higher ceiling. Obviously, the Eagles showed it in the playoffs last year because they made it to the Super Bowl, but the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl the year before, and I feel like I just have a lot of trust in Burrow.
It's funny because I think of the Bengals as like maybe the fourth or fifth best team in the league, and they're last in their division right now. I mean,
Yeah,
they're at
but
5-3, but still, it's just funny to think of.
yeah,
Uh,
and they could easily be 7-1 if Burrow's healthy.
yeah, I like the Eagles a lot too, Seth. And I feel like they have the highest ceiling because they're 8-1 and they haven't even played that well yet. I feel like there's just I don't know if they've reached their peak yet, which is great. I mean, you don't want to be peaking until playoff time, but yet they're still 8-1. That shows you how dominant of a team they are on both ends and in the trenches. Kyle,
I
who did you say? You said the Ravens, you sick man. Just another
Did
reason to talk about Todd Monken.
I did say the Ravens. I feel like in a similar vein, right? They're not anywhere near their peak. I think they're starting to get in a groove offensively. I wish we continued to see the usage from Zay Flowers that we saw early in the year, but they've kind of reeled him back as kind of a line of scrimmage and behind the line of scrimmage type receiver and ask him for yak instead of yards after the catch, instead of that downfield threat where we saw him catch some 40-50 yard passes early in the season. But they've really gotten back into that groove of Mark Andrews is actually our number one target, which makes sense. He's been one of the best tight ends in football since he's entered the league. So, but on the other side of the ball, I don't think Cleveland probably comes close, but what the Ravens are doing defensively to teams is just such a scary sight to have to play them in the playoffs. It kind of lets Lamar and the offense take their foot off the gas a little bit and not have to really go hard. So I'd be interested to see, because I don't know if they've even really played like a game where they've had to kind of duel it out with another
Yeah,
team because of that defense.
yeah, they're a very complete team for sure.
Like we thought that what was going to happen in that Lions game, right? Because at the time the Lions had one of the top defenses in the NFL too, and they just completely shredded the Lions 38-6. Defense completely suffocated them too, and it's like outside of that, I guess
Can you believe they lost to the Colts?
there's always like one or two losses during their regular season where it's like, what the hell happened that week?
And of course they lost to the Steelers. No
Yeah,
surprise there. Yeah, I like them a lot too, Kyle. I have like a tier in my mind's eye, a top tier of the Eagles, Ravens, Bengals, and Chiefs. And then we'll see with the Niners coming out of the bye because they've been
mm,
disappointing of late. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And my Seahawks, obviously, even after getting
facts.
trounced by the by the Ravens. All right, so me and Kyle, like AJ Brown is the best player. I mean, you throw it up to him, he's triple covered. It doesn't matter. He's scoring. Seth, who did you have as your best player?
I mean, I think if we're just saying best player, I think Patrick Mahomes is still the best player in the league. Has he
certainly elevates
performed?
his supporting cast, right?
Right. I mean, so I think that's still the choice, but I guess as far as like who's been the best this year and maybe taking like kind of past performance out of it, I think AJ Brown has a good case. Obviously, we should mention Tyreek Hill and what the
Yeah.
Dolphins have done this year. Um, Defensively, probably Miles Garrett. So I think any of them would have a case.
Mike has been great too, Michael Parsons.
Yeah,
Always
as
so.
always.
All right, let's wrap it up. Our favorite moment of the first half of the NFL season. Mine's a Minnesota Vikings moment, which
Damn
feels
right.
like it should have been Seth's, but
New
my favorite.
man on the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah.
Lizzo, is that you? My favorite moment so far is just happened last week when Josh Dobbs didn't practice with the team at all. Came to the Minnesota Vikings after the trade deadline, had to go in the game because their starter was concussed, and won the game for them against Arthur Smith and his bitch ass, which was so satisfying.
So satisfying.
And Dobbs didn't know the plays or the players' full names and said it was like you take AP Spanish all year and then the test is for AP French. He still won the game.
Literally, the way it worked was the coach would call the plays into Dobbs's headset. He would repeat it, and then the wide receivers would have to tell him what that play meant.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, "Oh, okay, so you're gonna go with it. Okay."
And
It's just
then they ran it
unbelievable.
like how McVay ran it with Goff in LA, where it was essentially hurry up the rest of the game so they can get to the line of scrimmage and they could tell him more in the headset
Right.
before the communications got cut off. Just wild.
That was awesome.
Only a astronaut could do such a thing.
It makes me wonder, like, is quarterback really that hard?
Yes. And certainly Kirk Cousins made it look hard. So I'm glad that
That's not true. He was
that
rolling,
Dobbs.
dude. I know we want to hate on Kirk Cousins, and I feel like ever since we had that discussion, shout out Ben at his bachelor party about and named all the quarterbacks we thought was better than him. Kirk Cousins took that personally and had to put himself firmly in the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL after that
No.
date.
I was
Yes, dude.
accosted at the urinal at that party.
Okay.
The fact that you ended up
I've
having that same conversation with a completely random group of people in the bathroom and then to walk out to the same conversation is another wild part of that night.
Life changing, I'll say.
the thing about Kirk Cousins has never been does he put up stats? He's always put up stats. He always has looked good when it doesn't matter. It's just that he's unreliable and you can't trust him in big moments because when you need a 3rd and 7 to get into field goal range to win the game, he throws it 6 yards
I love how we're
every
supposed to
time.
be going to talk about our favorite moment in the NFL season. We have
So,
set them up as
anyways, my
classic Kirk
favorite
runs.
moment was the same as Sam, and it's
Wow.
partially because I'm so excited to have Josh Dobbs on the team. But if I had to mention another moment, just to add another thing in, and because I feel like we haven't talked about the Dolphins enough and for how fun their season has been this year, I would just throw in the Dolphins put up 70 points and you had
70.
like 2 running backs have like the greatest fantasy day of all time on the same team. That was ridiculous.
That was insane, dude. 70 points. Not 60.
More than
70.
60.
Yeah, that was great. Kyle, what's your favorite moment of the season so far? It's gonna be something that somehow proves his preseason predictions right.
I don't even remember what the hell my preseason predictions were, and I have them written down right in front of me still. Um, just because I have a terrible memory, I'm just gonna say outside of that Josh Dobbs game this past weekend, also last week's games, Keenan Allen had one of the sickest catches I've ever seen for his, what was that, his 1,000th career catch,
Yeah.
where he caught it one-handed midair, essentially horizontal to the field, and then hauled it in barrel rolled onto the ground for a first down. It was wild. It was a wild catch. And for that to be his 1,000th career catch too.
That was a
Dirty.
nice moment. He's just aging like a fine wine.
He
These
really
guys,
is.
him and Thielen, doesn't matter if you're 30. Just keep going. All right. Well, that's been the NBA and the NFL.
I'd like to say, have you heard Josh Dobbs' new nickname?
What is it?
They're calling him the Pastronaut.
Oh my God. I love that. Seth, you're gonna ride that man to a 7th seed and you're gonna love it.
Damn straight I am. I'm going to the game this Sunday.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Got free
Against the
tickets
Saints.
from my mortgage loan officer. They're 100 level too. Should be
What
nice.
the hell?
Oh, you get to see Derek Carr in action. Tell me if you're disappointed.
Will do.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for yet another whole home episode of Sport Ball. I feel like we gave the people what they want, though. Their two favorite sports. Kyle, why don't you send the listeners home with something to wet their whistle to fall asleep to at night, like you do to Nas Reed's shooting splits?
Can I just pull those up and read those to the audience too?
Yeah, please.
All right, hold on one second. Didn't you already
Do
do
like an
this?
ASMR reading.
Yeah, I
that.
already did it, but like, yeah, do it.
I'm not
So
gonna
I
do it
can fall
again.
asleep to it.
Absolutely not. Well, I'd like to say, if you are a fan of Chicago sports, I'm sorry for you anyways. But if you're more specifically a fan of the Chicago White Sox, we've lost the realest of them all today. Our announcer, Jason Benetti, who is probably one of the best announcers in all of sports, was cut loose by the White Sox today. He announced he's signing or going to announce games for the Detroit Tigers. The Sox and ownership refuse to not only play the players, but pay the people that also entertain for the watchers that don't go to games, because there's a lot of them. It's absolutely atrocious what's going on in this city in regards to sports. I hope that my children are able to witness something better than what I've lived through. Besides those Blackhawks years, they are on the come up though. Connor Bedard is the truth. And this has been it from Chicago Sports Stogie, signing off. Enjoy your evenings.